everyone. Welcome to Afterthought FM. This is a podcast where I break down movies or shows and talk about what they're trying to say and whether I feel like it actually holds up. In this episode today, I'm going to start off with Ghost in the Shell, the 1995 anime, the first one. I want to say I did like it overall. I liked it. I'm a cyberpunk girly. I dig it. But the ending is the thing I think I'm going to critique today. It just didn't really sit quite right. And I sat there and I really, I took my time. I tried to figure out why. And I think, well, let me explain. So let me give you some context. If you haven't seen it yet, I don't want to give you any spoilers, but it's kind of like, it's about identity, consciousness, like sort of like the struggle with humanity or what it means to be human in a world that is like progressively mechanical or, cybernetic maybe is the word that I want to use there. And it builds up this idea of questioning like the self, like I said, your identity, which is really interesting as a concept. And I love that concept. I love a good psychological film. But I think the way it resolves its own idea or that idea is kind of where I have a little bit of like a mental limbo. Let me explain. At the end, this is where the spoilers come in, guys. Sorry. At the end, she merges with the puppet master guy or 2501 or whatever. And it's framed as like evolution or like they're like, oh, this is transcendence. This is amazing. But she never actually said yes. She never gave an explicit like form of consent. It didn't feel like she was making a clear choice. It was like the film tried to say that her philosophical agreement somehow equaled consent, but those are two different things. I think that like you can't treat that philosophical curiosity as consent. So that was like a major point to me. I think consent is pretty important. The second point that I thought was a little bit, it ties into the first one as well, but that I thought was a little bit strange, is personal growth. It doesn't really mean losing yourself. I don't agree with the idea that in order to grow as a person or as a human being, that you have to like completely dissolve your own identity. People change all the time. And that doesn't mean you're going to just like stop being you, right? You are who you are. And I would argue that who you are is going to drive what you want to change or improve or expand upon in yourself, because you hold those values and you say, hey, I noticed something in myself that I would like to change. That's who you are. And so if you're making that choice, then, obviously it's an internal growth. You're evolving. You're not being overwritten, especially not by an external force that just decided that that's what it wants. And, anyway. So I would say outside influence also, by the way, does not, like, you can't be taken over by outside influence. Well, you can be, but it's extremely unhealthy, right? That's called toxic codependence. There are support groups for that. So you don't want that. You don't want that. My point being in this situation is identity has value, and your identity, you have value just by existing, right? And you can evolve without being overwritten. In fact, I think that's integral to your evolution is who you are. And I think that that's something that we really need to sit with. And that's going to come back around in a later point. But let's move on to my third point first. I will circle back, hold your thoughts. So something big also that stood out is any film, right? It's almost like a rule in film that for the audience to care about a specific character, this character needs a strong identity or individuality or something like that, right? In order for us to care, you need that. And that's just good story writing. But the end of this film dismisses that entirely. It says We're going to build up this good character, and you're going to care about her, and she's going to be great, and you're going to love her. And she's really curious, and she's willing to sacrifice her body and herself to get done whatever needs to get done. And then none of that actually matters because she's just going to get taken over or dissolved or whatever. Or she's going to merge, I should say. She's going to merge. She's going to cease to exist and become an entirely new being. And I guess that treated identity as disposable in my mind. And I think that, like, the clash there is emotional investment versus philosophical claim. Does that make sense? Like, you can't ask me to care about her as a person and then tell me that being a person doesn't matter. I think that's the through line for that thought. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way, I would say. The comparisons, I have a few comparisons. So, like, if you look at Cyberpunk Edge Runners or Cyberpunk 2077, both of them identify losing yourself as a cost instead of as a transcendence, because that's what that is. Like, losing yourself is the cost of enhancing yourself or integrating into this mechanical world, or Neon Genesis or Evangelion, they deal with individuality versus connection as a choice, and that boils down to choice. They don't my point is, these stories don't skip over or gloss over the cost. They, like, directly deal with it. They make you sit in that discomfort. And I think that that's important to do as media. Like, we need that. Human beings need that. We need to be able to sit in the discomfort of individuality, which brings me back. We're circling back now to my previous point where I said we would circle back. I try to make good on my promises. The biggest idea, the biggest problem that I have with this film is the film itself, maybe the writers, I don't know. It feels uncomfortable with the burden of being an individual. And I think that's like, it's kind of hiding or the easy way out. Like, instead of exploring what it means to be an individual, it just jumps straight to dissolving the self as the answer. And I don't think that feels like growth to me. I feel like it just feels like avoiding a harder question, or avoiding sitting in the discomfort of humanity and what it means to be human. It just says, well, it means nothing instead, and I'm gonna just completely avoid thinking about that, And I think that's kind of, again, I think it's just an easy way out rather than, sitting with that. And there's something wrong with that. Everybody has their own ways of dealing with things. I'm not saying that these movies or writers' philosophy is inherently, like, wrong or incorrect. I think everybody, has their own way of doing things. But I think, to me, it just kind of, it's a little hypocritical to storytelling in general. Again, which brings me back to, we need to care about this character, so you have to give her individuality, but then you're going to tell me individuality doesn't matter. And I think that's just weird. I think that's just weird. It's just weird. So yeah. I get what it was trying to do. I understand the philosophy. I think it's a cool take. I think it's really interesting idea. I think it's good that it's out there. I think anything that makes you think about questions, bigger life questions, is an important piece of media. I'm not going to say that it's bad. I like the movie, but I would say that the ending threw me off personally. It wasn't for me. I will probably watch 2.0, Ghost in the Shell 2.0. I might even watch the live action if you guys want to hear about that too. I just don't think the 1995 Ghost in the Shell earned its conclusion, if that makes sense. But that's just me trying to make it make sense. Thank you for listening. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next episode.